I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today we have a really special episode. It is actually episode 78. So if you're familiar with the tarot, you know that there are 78 cards in the deck, and this is our 78th episode. So we have been really excited about recording this episode for a long time. It's also a little bittersweet because it's going to our last episode for a little bit of time. Peter, which I'm sure he will talk about in a few minutes, is going to be off doing some very exciting things. So Tarot with Bonnie and Peter is going to take a bit of a pause for now, but that doesn't mean we're never going to record another episode. And we thought, we've been thinking for a long time about what we wanted to talk about for this episode. And we thought, well, why not all the things we love about tarot? We created this podcast because Peter and I have such a love for tarot. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you know how deeply enamored we are with this tool. So today we're going to talk about our favorite things. So why we love tarot, some of our favorite spreads, some decks that we love, maybe some books. So we're going to see where this episode takes us. And we're just really happy to have you here with us. So thank you for joining us. And hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. I love that you said bittersweet. I think I mentioned I was talking to a client a little while ago and asking how the podcast was going. And I happened to mention to them that, we were going to be recording our last episode for a little while because I'll be heading back to school and kind of focused on that. And I had a hard time getting the sentence out without getting choked up. So I'm hoping I'll make my way, through this episode because we've been talking about episode 78 and what we're going to do. And, I didn't think that, we'd get, 78 will also mark sort of a pause as well. So I guess in some ways it is a special episode for a variety of reasons, but I love the way you worded that because you're right. It's a love and a passion I think that we both have, and it's what has sustained the podcast for 78 episodes, and I that's not lost on either one of us. Like that's an accomplishment in the podcasting world. Like we've been doing this consistently for over 2 years. We have put out either a weekly or, kind of a bi-weekly or bi-monthly episode now since May of 2024. And, all because we met at a random, tarot and tea in our little, the town that's close to you and that I live in, and, ended up doing a reading for each other. And it was like, wow. So that's good, right? The things that can happen and from the tarot, from the tarot. I was going through some of my old notes, and I still have the notes that I wrote down from the reading that you gave me. So
I remember that reading. We each pulled a card. I remember the card that I pulled, or like the card that you read for me, the card that I read for you. And it was great. And I'm really happy that we went on this adventure. I got to be sad because, when Peter and I get together to record these podcasts, we chat, we catch up beforehand. I'm going to miss that. So we'll definitely have to, keep catching up, Peter.
Yeah, but we will, right? Because we become friends through the podcast as well. And I don't think that's going to stop. And again, I don't think the podcast is going to stop, but it definitely will be a sustained break for sure. Because this program that I'm going into is one that's going to run until at least April of 2028. And it is pretty intense in-person school, which is going to be new. I haven't been an in-person student in quite some time.
Tables are turning for you, right?
I know. This is the one thing that Kelly has said is like, you can actually be on the other side of the desk, and having been used to running an institution and leading it is you're going to have to bring, kind of keep, I'll say, my ego in check. Although, I'm happy to, because I want to learn, right? I want to learn. It's an area that I have interest in, but not an awful lot of theory in, a little bit of practice in. And, I'm going to be learning with people who are coming from all over the world as well in this program. So, and it's bilingual. So I'll be brushing up on my French as well, which is good, which is my first language. So it's not, it's rusty, but it's pretty good. So, and like just learning from people and learning with people is going to be huge. Absolutely huge. But it will be new for sure. Being on the other side of the desk is going to be new.
This is the fall moment for you, right? You're starting an adventure. You're like going into new territory.
Yeah.
So
yeah, as a matter of fact, I did a reading with someone else about this particular process, and the Fool was actually one of the cards that came up. So yes, indeed. Yeah, it is for sure. For sure. So, and again, right, just to highlight that, the tarot is something that, podcast aside, client work aside, mentor work aside, is something that we both live and breathe, and we use it differently, but we definitely use it as a tool. So, if we talk about the idea of guidance and insight and reflection and intuition, these are all things that, for me, the tarot is critical, absolutely critical, and has been for a long time in using that. So,
yay! Yeah. Okay, so should we talk about why we love the tarot so much?
Yes, yeah. So, Bonnie, why do you love the tarot so much?
Me, I get to go first. Okay, so I cannot imagine my life without a deck of tarot cards. And I thought about that the other day. I'm like, if somebody took if I had no access to tarot, what would that do to me? I mean, I wouldn't, my life wouldn't be over, of course. I would probably create my own deck on paper and be like, well, you can take it away from me, but I'm still going to use it somehow. I don't know. It's something almost that you can't even explain with words. People know this. I was afraid of the tarot for most of my life. I thought it was just filled with a lot of negativity and scary things that I didn't want to see. And I think that at that time, I probably emotionally wasn't ready to work with the deck. Once it came into my life, and then, again, because I did get a deck when I was a teenager, it just changed so much. It was like I always had this ability, right? Not ability, but I was always very intuitive. I was always I knew things. I can hear things. I can see things. I have a lot of those clairs, but I never really trusted that. But the tarot gave it something, right? So it was I could pull these cards, and then I could really draw on all of these things that I was really good at, like hearing my intuition or seeing things in the cards. And it just expanded that side of me in such a way that I can't really explain. So it's this relationship, this partnership, this language. It gives me so much insight. Again, I don't read the cards as a term of prediction, but when I read them, it's oh, what are they actually saying to me? If this card could speak to me, what would it say to me right now? And I love that. And I can't even put a price or a value on something like that and what that's given me my own life. So as much as I love to read for other people and teach other people about tarot, what it's actually done for me on a personal level, I can't even describe. So it's my favorite part of the day. So every morning, I make I have my breakfast, I make my coffee, I come in my office and I do 3 cards, and then I just see what message do I need to hear today, and just the insights that I get. It's like that friend that always just tells you just like it is, right? Sometimes the tarot, it's in your face, it's going to tell you, but not in a way that has to be really scary, but in a way that really reflects oh, I need to look at this. So it just speaks to me in a way that there's no other tool that I've found that has helped me on a personal level so much as the tarot has. So
yeah,
I don't know. That's kind of a long-winded way.
It's not at all.
I love it, but it just I can't explain why. And I've always been fascinated with cards, so the tarot is just that next level, and I'm so happy that I have it in my life. So
yeah. Yeah, and I think you had talked about having sort of an affinity to oracle cards and things like that prior to the tarot, right? So, yeah, I love that, and I'm with you. It'd be hard to imagine it, uh, my life without the tarot. Although, having said that, because my tarot journey is a pretty long one. I got my first deck as a teenager, which is about 25 years ago, I think now. Oh, I thought you were going to spit out your coffee. And
I shut them out in my head, and I'm like, oh, okay.
But that's a 40, like that's a 40 plus year relationship. But then when I think about the times where I needed something the most, like the tarot was there. So like 17 is not an easy time to kind of be, you're discovering who you are, you have all kinds of questions. And it was odd that I kind of found that tool at that time. And then, kind of going through the highs and lows of relationships, the birth of my children. I remember it being a huge, important part to me with the death of my dad, which happened when I was kind of in my late 30s. And then shortly thereafter, my first wife and I took a big long trip. We actually drove all the way across Canada. And I specifically remember being kind of in the Banff area and, in the Canadian Rocky Mountains with my tarot deck and a journal and doing a significant amount of reflection. I think about, both kind of the end of my, like all the transition times, and the tarot was often that companion. And I think, you had said it, the guidance that you get, and that sometimes it is in your face. And I always say what I love about it the most is it's objectivity. Like you can have a friend or a confidant, but regardless of how much you trust them and how much they trust you, there's always going to be the possibility that they're bringing their own perspective or even their own kind of baggage to what you're talking about. Maybe they're saying what they think you want to hear, or maybe they're worried about being, as confronting because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Or the tarot doesn't do that. Like, like you talk about, a time of upheaval in your life, and you pull the tarot or the Tower card, there's nothing that you can't soften that message, right? That is about upheaval and change. And no matter how much you might want it to be different, it's going to tell you about upheaval and change. And it's not framing it in a way that's bad or good. It's not judging you. That's the difference, is it's informing you and guiding you. And I just think I have yet to find a tool that I would connect with as deeply and as effectively as a tarot deck in that regard. But, I have gone through periods where my tarot decks would have sat untouched for a good chunk of time, and then always at some point go back to a deck because there's just so much comfort there. I don't know. That too felt like it was long-winded, but that to me has been, as I was thinking about that, like 17, that's 43 years ago. That's a long, that's a long time to be connected to something,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I think back.
It's my longest relationship.
Right?
Right?
And I think back and I'm like, if I had only had the tarot at that point in my life, right? But I want to say this for other people that might have found tarot later in life, or maybe have dabbled in it. And, it doesn't have to be something like Peter and I are beautiful examples of, like, Peter's had it since he was 17 and he's had it through his whole life, helping him make those. I didn't really connect with it in that way. And I found it much later in life, but that doesn't mean that you have to be somebody who started reading tarot when you were 14 because your grandmother used to read tarot and she passed it down to you, right? Like, I think sometimes people have this perspective of, oh, if I haven't been doing this since I was a kid, then what's the point? Like, maybe it's not for me, right? Please don't think like that. Yeah. If it's calling you for a reason, it's because you're ready. I don't think we're ready sometimes to deal with something that is not insightful or not that it's not helpful, but if you really, for me, I think I needed to go really deep with the deck instead of superficial level.
Yeah.
And I will need to do that, in my later.
Yeah. Well, and I sure as hell wasn't any depth to my practice at the age of 17. At 17, it was probably more like, ooh, this seems pretty rebellious. And, I'm pretty sure that's where it was going. But again, it kind of stays connected. And there was also a big ebb and flow. So there would have been times and over extended periods where it wouldn't have been part of my life at all. And you're right. You come to it. You come to it when you come to it. And it certainly doesn't diminish, our capacity to be able to talk about the tarot. Your knowledge of the tarot is certainly not in any way, shape, or form impeded by timeline, right? Like you are maybe the most knowledgeable person I speak to on a regular basis about the tarot. I'm pretty sure most of our listeners would agree. Like the amount of insight that comes from that is huge, right? Is huge. Like I'm always surprised when you say, yeah, it's been just a few years that I've dug. It's like, oh my goodness, like, that's a lot of insight. And that I hope should be comforting to people who are listening and even thinking about dabbling in the tarot is that, it doesn't require years and years and years and years of study. I think it requires an element of knowledge, but it probably requires more a desire to be open to sort of playing with it and to getting a sense as to what it's like. So.
Well, thank you, Peter. I'm going to practice receiving right now instead of deflecting. So thank you for.
You're welcome. I'm glad to hear that.
Tarot, and it's a lifelong learning. Yeah. Like you're never going to reach a point in your life where you're like, oh, I know everything there is to know. Like every time you look at a card or you pick up a new deck, deck cleaners are really making really interesting decks that
agreed.
Making like the underlying theme of that card is still the same, but there's a picture on it. Like I just got the Dreaming Way Tarot. This has been in my wish list for years, and I finally got it. I got the World card the other day, and it reminded me of my dad. And the World card doesn't usually have an elderly man in it. Right. So there was a man sitting in a chair with a pipe. My dad smoked a pipe, reading a book, having a nap in nature. I'm like, this is my father. I never in a million years would have attributed the World card to my dad, but it still had that theme of like success. Like he had done something and now he's having a nap and really relishing in that and completion and success. But for me, I'm like, oh my God, what is this message trying to tell me about my dad?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of tarot. Totally. And with all decks that are, that we have and are, they're really easy to get. So it's just a beautiful, fascinating world.
Yeah. So was that a good segue? Because we talk about some of our favorite things. You mentioned a deck. And we've done a couple of, so for those of you that are new to our podcast, we might have even done 2 episodes in the past where we suggested decks, and I think we've done things like good decks for beginners, our favorite decks and so forth and so on. So for some people, this might be repetition because you probably know where I'm going to go if I'm going to talk about my favorite deck. But I'm curious because you talked about a new deck, so...
Oh, yeah, this one is very new to me, so I wouldn't put it in the category of my favorites.
All right.
Because I just got it, but it's definitely one that's been on my list for a long time, and I'm really enjoying reading it and learning about it. So I will say it's probably going to be a deck that I'm going to turn to quite often. It's really hard, I'm sure, if listeners are listening and going like, yeah, how do you pick your favorite decks? I love them all, if I'm going to be honest. Some I like more than others based on the imagery or the guide. But if, you're going to win my heart if your deck has a really good guidebook. So I kind of attribute deck and guidebook together. One deck that is kind of newish to my collection, I've had it for a little while now, but have been using daily for quite some time, is the Muse Tarot, which is by Chris Ann. And we all know that the Light Seers is also by Sand, and I learned the tarot on the Light Seers. So I have an affinity for that deck. So those two obviously are in my favorites list. In terms of guidebooks, both of them, like the Light Seers Tarot, I really learned on the tiny little book that came in that deck. I really studied it. I really it was just sort of coming from this healing perspective, and it just introduced me to tarot in a way that really resonated with me and how I wanted to use the cards. I love the Muse Tarot. I think it's fascinating. I love, you know, I'm not great at explaining how decks are created, but it's like collage type.
Style, yeah.
Yes, collage style. That deck book or the guidebook with that is also quite amazing. So I really couldn't imagine my life without those two decks. Of course, there are many, many decks that I love. The Dreamkeeper's Tarot, I love that guidebook. The deck is great too, but like I'll go to the guidebook. Like even when I'm using a deck and I want to get some more depth about the card, there's certain guidebooks from other decks that I will go to see what that author has written about that deck, and what that guidebook is one of those for me. So that is a very, very small sliver of decks that I love, but this episode could be 9 hours long if we go into
I know. Because decks, I don't know about you, but I find for me that I find that my connection to decks ebbs and flows. There are some that kind of stay constant, but there are some, and it's so funny you mentioned the Muse Tarot, because now I'm going to have to go back and revisit it because I have a copy as well. And I love the Light Seers Tarot, and I'm not a fan of the Muse. And I think it's because of its collage style, but you know, I trust your opinion, so I might go back and kind of have a look at it. But you know, you kind of, because I know for me, the Rider-Waite has always been, or I'll probably say lately has been always the Rider-Waite Smith, the 100-year anniversary edition. So 1909. I have different variations of that one as well. I like that. I've always talked about the guy in tarot. As a matter of fact, it's the one I pulled out if we're going to end up doing a card reading after this episode. But I think that's probably more through personal connection. You know, how I found the guy in tarot is probably as important as the deck itself. Same thing, the Rider-Waite Smith would have easily been the first iteration of a deck I ever bought. Certainly not the deck I'm using now, because it's not, I don't know where that deck is. But other decks like, I think it's Robin Scott, and if I get the name of the creator wrong, my apologies, it's Robin something, I think it's Robin Scott, is the Urban Tarot, which I've been kind of playing with a little bit, which is, again, it's actually, which is surprising for me, it's actually kind of a Thoth-based deck with some Rider-Waite-based images, but all about living in a city center. So as opposed to kind of English countryside that is the Rider-Waite Smith, it's sort of based on like a New York, you know, or almost Manhattan-based city, you know, or maybe Toronto-based city because I'm Canadian, but it's got that city feel to it for each of the cards, and that, you know, somebody who was born and raised in the fourth largest city in North America, I find appeal to that as well. So I've been playing with that one a little bit more.
The Urban Tarot. I have to check that out. I don't have that one. This is a problem when we talk about decks.
I know. How
many decks have I bought because of you?
Look, I think about how many decks I bought because of the guests who we've had on. I think we had a string of tarot creators that went on 5 or 6 of them, and it ended up costing me, you know, about $400 over the course of 5 or 6 episodes, because I'd run out, they talk about their deck, and away I'd go. You know, would help our little our favorite little shop here in town as well. So yeah, for me, it's the guy in tarot has been a favorite since I got my deck, and I bought it because, again, I bought it I didn't buy it. Kelly bought it for me. Bought a limited edition of the deck, so there's only 500 of them, of the one that I have made. I still have it. And bought it directly from Joanna. So it's where I met Joanna as well, was at Reader's Studio. It was the first time I bought a deck that was quite different. So although it's Rider-Waite Smith inspired, the images look nothing like those on, well, some do, but even then, you know, it is very earth-based. The suits are not the regular suits. They're elemental suits. So it almost felt like, oh, and again, I was studying pretty deeply in both astrology and the tarot. So it was like, oh, this is like my grown-up deck. It's like a deck where has different things and I can still kind of work with it. So that has been a perennial favorite of mine as well. And then, I always have decks that kind of come and go. For a while, the Revelations Tarot, which I don't think is in print anymore. I love the concept that the reversed cards actually have an image that tied to the reversed meaning of the card, so that the image changes depending on whether you're looking at it upright or reverse. So when I was working with reversals, I loved using that deck. Yeah. And then, I've also talked recently about the Winter Season Tarot by Danielle Norman, which is probably the most recent deck that spoke directly to me. It had a very Canadian kind of feel to it. Obviously, we live 6 months in the winter. Last year, it felt like more than that. Right? Sometimes, but I think there's a level of beauty and serenity, I think, to the winter as well. For anybody who's experienced, what I call almost the perfect day, as though it's when it's like minus 18 degrees outside, but there's a crystal clear blue cloudless sky. That to me, and exactly, there's no wind, snow on the ground, crystal blue skies. To me, that's hiking weather. And I find at times the most amount of serenity inside that space. Things almost sound different, smell different, feel different. So that was a deck that almost seemed to encapsulate that. So that one spoke to me recently. But I toyed with, but funny enough, I toyed with using that in client work, and it just didn't quite connect either. So for me, client work has always been the Rider-Waite-Smith, little teeny times kind of playing with multiple decks, but I don't know. So I didn't really say, which one was my favorite. The Guy in Tarot probably is my all-time favorite.
I have the Guy in Tarot as well, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I love that deck as well. And the beauty about having different decks, right, is if you start to do readings for other people, there's some decks that they're just personal to you and not something that you would use for client work. And then there's those other decks. So there's those like workhorse decks that, have really clear readings and you feel comfortable reading for other people. I own a lot of decks that I would never use for client readings, but I would use them for myself. So, again, those are like personal, reasons why you would or wouldn't use them for clients. But that's the beauty of having different decks.
Yeah, totally. And then I find as well, I would often tell students who have multiple decks is to compare the images, because sometimes a creator kind of puts a particular aspect of a card's meaning into the artwork, which can be different from the aspect of a particular meaning for the same card in another deck. And I think it does help broaden your own experience and meaning with certain cards. So that's always a great exercise. But you're right. Sometimes there are decks where, there are decks I know I have that I would never work with a client. And actually, sometimes even the work that I do with them would be very specific. I think of the Spirit Keeper's Tarot from Benabel Wen, which is to me a deep study deck, which I kind of take out, put away, put away when I really want to go deep with almost, the full esoteric meaning of particular cards. But I only would look at that deck 2 or 3 cards at a time. And I've had it for 3 years and I still haven't gone through all 78 cards. So, so it depends, right? Decks can have a purpose. They can be your favorites for certain reasons. But I always fun,
seasons,
right? I always find it's like
our Halloween people. Right?
Totally. It's like having the wine collection, you don't necessarily have the wine so that you're going to drink them all at the exact same time. You have some, so they'll sit on a shelf. Their flavor will change over a particular amount of time. Some you'll take out only at, special occasions. There's what I call quaffing wine.
You share with friends.
Totally,
others, you're like, I'm not sharing this.
I'm not sharing this, right? There are times where it's like, I'm sitting down and I'm enjoying a hockey game for me, and I want to enjoy a nice glass of red wine. I got what I call quaffing wine. I just open that up, pour a glass, and it's great. It's unobtrusive, not offensive. Tarot is the same. No, think of that.
I love that analogy, Peter. It is so smart.
Right.
Tarot is like wine.
Totally. I think of, what's that? Think of myself. It's like, for tarot decks, I think of myself sort of almost as like, an OSPCA, like a shelter for animals, except for I'm a shelter for tarot cards. So, when they need a home, I'm happy to bring them into my own home so that they can feel safe and loved.
You know what? That's funny, but there's truth to that. Anytime I get a new deck, and I'm sure everybody has their own way of how they sort of cleanse their new deck or welcome their new deck. I hold mine towards my heart and I sort of say a little blessing, but I always thank the deck. I'm like, thank you for choosing me, right? To come to my collection. And I look forward to this relationship we're going to build. So you say that as a joke, but it's actually, I think the tarot decks find us.
I agree.
And they like choose us to work with or, to find a home with. So
I agree. It was tongue in cheek more than a joke, because I would agree. I think Liz Worth had us do an exercise. I was taking some of her classes around when you get a deck is to do a reading of the deck with the deck. There was a series of questions, getting to know the deck through a reading with the deck. And I thought this was a really interesting exercise to do as well. Right. So, yeah. All right.
They're like our babies.
Yeah, totally. Of course. Right. And they grow up and they get old. And how they speak changes. Like you can think of all kinds of analogies with the tarot deck, right? So,
100%. We could go on and on about that, as we have. Okay, do you want to? As we often. Okay, do you want to mention a couple of books that you love or that you would recommend? Or
well, if you're watching this as opposed to listening to it, if you can make out the spines of the books that are in my background, all of them, I can actually see, Robert Place's original book on something about the tarot. Like I always think there are tons of really, really good books. I'll say that there's tons of crap. And I mean that, like when I go through it, I'll be like, oh my goodness, like I would never throw anyone under the bus, but you're looking at them and going, I can't believe that you're selling this as content to people. So I would tell people, be discerning, because not all tarot books are created equal. I would look for authors that you trust, but that's not to say that there aren't some great new authors that are out there, or newer authors. Cassandra Snow is one that comes to mind as well, which is, with at least 2 or 3 books now. So go and check them out as far as authors go. For me, 78 Degrees of Wisdom would probably always be a book that I would refer to. As a matter of fact, I've probably had 5 or 6 copies, and my copy has been, given out. I think the latest one was one of the vendors at our local farmers market. We were chatting about the tarot, and, they happened to say, well, what would you recommend? And I had mentioned 78 Degrees of Wisdom from Rachel Pollack. And then the next week I brought my copy and gave it to them, and haven't seen it back yet, which is fine with me, because it means that they're using it, and it's found itself a new home. A couple I pulled out. So speaking of Rachel Pollack, and if you're watching, Tarot Wisdom is a great book. So this was an updated version of 78 Degrees of Wisdom. It contains all kinds of stuff, like all kinds of information, goes pretty deep into every card. But then I like it because it talks about some of the esoteric connections, and then it gives sample meanings for cards. And it's Rachel Pollack. She's the late Rachel Pollack, but she's all kinds of knowledge. I think it's still in print. It would be a great book to get. And then the other one would be previous podcast guest, Mary Greer, which is Tarot for Yourself. I think it's changed its name now. I don't know what the updated... No?
I think it's still called Tarot for Yourself. I also have that book.
And it's yourself as in like 2 words as opposed to yourself. Yes. Wasn't the first book I got, but would have been very early on. As a matter of fact, I've gone through it because you write little exercises. And at one point, the date that I had put in there was 2003. So I've had that book for a long time. And it
For
would have been
23?
at least it would have been my first introduction to doing sort of different work with the tarot for yourself. So things like finding your birth card, your year card, but trying to use the tarot in very creative ways. She is by far the master at doing that. Like it is, it would be one that I would strongly recommend. And then Cassandra Snow's Queering the Tarot is another one that I go back to often because I find it gives me a lens to look at the tarot. It gives me a lens to which is not part of my lived experience, but nonetheless is still part of the lived experience. And I find it's a book that really, I find it exceptionally insightful and very reflective. So it's one that, sits on I have a shelf of books that I go to a lot. Tarot correspondences from Mel Moline and T. Susan Chang is another one where if I'm looking to go, what kind of correspondences, especially if they're deeper correspondences that I don't kind of have, up here, or if they're things where I'm like, I think it's connected to this, but I'm not sure, would be another one that I go to. But I don't know how many tarot books I have. I have more tarot books than I have tarot decks for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
That's
since
impressive.
brought them up. At one point they were in like plastic bins in the basement, but I did do a big cull. But I still have, there are a lot of books and a variety of primary text. I have a few books that like from Aleister Crowley. I certainly have at least two from Arthur Waite. I have 4 or 5 from Paul Foster Case. So, some older stuff as well. I got a big compendium book called Tarot, which, has Tarot and the Bohemians, some stuff that's written from the 18th century, 19th century, translated books from French, from Papus, and, so tons. But my favorites would be the ones that I would have mentioned. That was a long-winded answer. And
We have a lot of books, Peter. Again, it's hard to narrow it down.
It's
like
hard.
we're like skimming the surface, and this is no I'm sure there are other book creators, deck creators out there that are amazing, and we haven't mentioned here. But again, this is just a few little.
Totally. And explore. If you find a book, I would always say, for a bookseller kind of worth their salt, an independent bookseller, they're going to let you go in there and read the first few pages. So, take a look at the table of contents, see if the voice that's in that book is one that resonates with you. Take a look and see what deck are they using, because usually they have permission to use images. Make sure that resonates with you as well. If they're giving you practical examples on how to use the tarot, make sure how they're suggesting the use of tarot works for you and in the way that you want to use it. But you're right. There's tons of books that we're not mentioning at all. Yeah.
I would, in terms of Rachel Pollack and Mary Greer, I'm not going to repeat what you said because I also have those books and I think that they're fantastic. A couple books that I would recommend. Anything from Sasha Graham. So if you know me, I am a huge fan of Sasha Graham. I know her personally. I've met her a few times. And I think the way that she describes tarot speaks so deeply to my soul. I really resonate with what she says. And quite often I'm reading what she's saying. I'm like, oh my God, that's what I think too. So it's very interesting. So a couple of books. One book I read literally cover to cover. I can't say that about most of the tarot decks that I have. I kind of read them in parts. I don't often start at the beginning and finish. But the one book that I did do that with is, I'm going to get the name right, The Magic of Tarot by Sasha Graham.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's a great read. She also, this book, I have it here too, and I'll show you. This book is amazing. You're the Rider-Waite-Smith guy, but
it's sitting on the shelf back there. You might be able to see it, so I have it.
Yeah, the complete book of Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot by Sasha Graham.
Yeah.
she does go into a lot of the symbolism of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but I think as a learning perspective, I think that's fascinating. But she also talks a lot about the card, regardless of, the symbolism. So even if you're not using the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you can get a lot of information. Like, it's huge what she talks about, and there's so many spreads. It's just a fantastic, fantastic book. So I would definitely add those to the list of must-have tarot books.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that as well. There'd be some authors that I would talk about too that are more recent. Barbara Moore would be one for sure to explore. Michelle T is another one, TEA, to explore as well. T. Susan Chang or Susie Chang has, and I think her most recent book is Four Stories, which is kind of a look at the tarot through the elements.
Love that.
Well, we can say it now. I think we got an advanced copy when we had her here on the podcast, making sure that we didn't share it. I've since bought the book. Like, it's excellent. Liz Worth is another one who has one called, I think it's something like, Beyond the Little White Book, Beyond the LWB, which is again, phenomenal. I'm trying to think of these are authors that, just kind of coming off the top of my head. I mentioned Cassandra Snow. Janet Boyer is another one who has a different kind of look. I don't know if she's published anything recently, but she has a really interesting book. One book was called Back in Time, which I found to be fascinating when I read it. Probably came out 10 or 15 years ago. There are some really innovative books. And I always think when you can find an author like a Sasha Graham, then you can kind of trust when they come out with something that it's going to be of value. Of course, Rachel Pollack isn't going to come out with anything, else. I think Mary Greer has had a recent book that she's come out with, but these are all new authors in the tarot space that, are fantastic. So.
And don't discount the guidebook that comes with your deck.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, if you have a deck that you love and it has a really good guidebook, that can be like a massive source of information because a lot of times they'll go into deeper meanings of the cards. They'll have really great spreads. A lot of times they talk about the history of tarot. So those guidebooks that come with the deck are an incredible source of information as well. So
and a good indicator that you're actually getting an authentic tarot deck is that it comes with a guidebook. Now, they don't all come with guidebooks, and some of the guidebooks can be small, but the one thing you always want to avoid is a deck that has, and this is just an aside, has a little QR code. That's usually a pretty good indicator that what you've got actually is a fraudulent deck that's been published, and it's $15 and has a QR code. That's probably a pretty good indicator that it's a knockoff of some kind, and that the creator's not seeing any money. Somebody's done some publishing, and often it's lesser quality. So anyways, but it's all kinds, like, you're right. Some of the guides out there are great. I know Joanna Powell Colbert has the original guide with the Guide Tarot, and then re-released the deck in February and updated the guide as well. I have both, and they are like
I have the updated version.
Yeah, but they're often go-tos, even when you're not using the deck. They're so well written that you just you treat it like a tarot resource as opposed to a deck resource. You kind of treat it like a resource for the tarot itself. So
yes, there's another. I'd have to find the book on.
It's one of the nice things about having them behind me. Again, for those that are watching,
you can just turn around. No, wind her up to the side. There's a deck. Is it called the Vampires Tarot? The book is Phantasmagoria. That comes with Ian. Oh my God. Okay, I have to get it.
Okay. All right. Bonnie's going to go and get it. So the one thing I'll mention, there's a book, I can't remember the author, but if you're into the history of the tarot, and it's written, I think she wrote it originally, might be in Italian or in French. I have the French version. It's just called L'Histoire du Tarot, but it's been translated into the history of the tarot. And it's a hardcover book, beautiful book, tons of research that's been done in it. Sometimes those are great places to go to if you're interested in the history of the tarot. That is one thing. At some point in time, I'm going to create a course on the history of the tarot. It is a bucket list thing for me to do. I will absolutely do it. I think I had said I was going to do it a while ago, got focused on other courses, but I promise that at some point there is I won't say the near future because, but
but we will see it.
Oh, you'll see it for sure.
We'll see it in the future. Okay, this is the book. It's Phantasmagoria by
Phantasmagoria.
Ian Daniels.
Okay.
And I think the deck is Vampire Tarot. It's some form of that. This guidebook is phenomenal also, and something that I use as a resource for, and there's a lot. So this is like when you have time to read.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information in those cards, but I really, really love his interpretation of the cards and the really deep, profound meanings that that he writes about. So that's another great. That deck I don't think is for everybody. Some people do readings with it. That's fine. Me, that's sort of more of a personal thing that I do with it. But yeah, the guidebook is phenomenal.
Yeah,
so
you're a Halloween fan too, so that could come out. And I'll do a plug for, we said 78 episodes. So over all kinds of past episodes, Bonnie and I have either used different decks when we do our readings at the end of our little one-part reading at the end. We've talked about decks. We've talked to deck creators. We've occasionally mentioned books. We've certainly had authors come on. So if you're and we must have listed a dozen different books and decks here. But if you're curious for more perspective, this is a great time to go back and have a listen to what would totally amount to close to 100 hours of, free, engaging conversation on the tarot. So if you haven't done so, please go back, have a listen, please. Anyways. Please.
Yes, lots of great content on there. For sure. Okay, Peter, do you want to talk about a couple of your favorite spreads?
Sure. And I've mentioned here before, I'm not a spread guy, haven't been for a little while. However, I will mention two. And the first is
also,
well, that's exactly it, right?
Right.
So what I was going to mention is I would often use, I don't know what to call it. I think I've called it a free flow narrative spread, which is usually 3, 4, sometimes 5 or 6 cards, but I find 3 or 4 is enough. Cards that I would draw in a straight line, starting from left, going to right, that usually follows a narrative sequence of some kind. So from either the background to the start of a particular question, issue, or guidance, and bringing it right to the possibility of outcome or information or guidance that you need to know to kind of bring this situation either to a close or have it move forward. There's no kind of structure or set card, like, we often think of a spread and say, okay, well, card 1 is about this, card 2 is about this, card 3 is about this, and so forth and so on. It has a much more free flow. So for me, I always allow the cards, to sort of interpret themselves. And, I don't mean that to sound lazy, but I think, for example, if I was drawing a narrative and the sequence of numbers was going from kind of, 1, 2, 3 and leading its way up to larger numbers, I would talk about the concept that this, could be a narrative that is making its way through time and is showing some kind of growth or path forward because the numbers show that, and then start interpreting the cards. So, I like the freedom that it gives me as a reader to really go deep with a small number of cards. So that has been my favorite way of working with the tarot for quite some time. Although I do like a, body, mind, spirit. I do sometimes like sort of I won't call it a past, present, future, but I call it like a foundation, present, outcome, or foundation, present, next step kind of approach as well. But that's sort of what I would do in a narrative anyways. I'd be like, it would usually be kind of, foundation or past, present in that middle sort of card section, and then the last one, maybe 2 cards, would be kind of a next step or option card. So that's a pretty standard structure of using the tarot. And I've been doing that for a long time. I'll give a quick shout out to something I actually did through, and it worked out extremely well with a recent client. I actually used the 3x4 grid to kind of look at themes in a year ahead. And I loved it because there were enough cards where clear outliers said something like, when you've got, one ace kind of sitting in a particular position with 12 cards, it really kind of, speaks and says, oh, wait a minute. If you've got 12 cards and yet none of them are of a particular suit, that talks about, that tells you something about the question that you've had there. If you have 12 cards and only one major arcana, or you have 12 cards and 9 of them are major arcana, that's enough cards to kind of be like, oh, wait a minute, that kind of says something. Or if you had 12 cards and it was like, I've got, a strong, solid balance, then you're like, okay, well, I'm looking at, a situation that has a fair amount of balance. It let me look at timelines, kind of near future or present, kind of near future outcomes and further away. So I really like that. But again, it's not like I said, okay, well, this column and this row means this and this card means this. It was quite free flowing, but probably done with a large tableau, like large enough that I had never done it before. And it was easy to work with from a reader's perspective. And I think it was, there was a significant amount of insight that came from it. And then the last one is probably my favorite is an intentional draw of a card. When I want to get a particular feeling or a particular energy, I just go and take the card out of the deck and bring it with me. I think I've talked about the idea of 3 of Cups moments and, having those whenever I'm on stage performing. So I was like, F it. The 3 of Cups now sits in my gig bag. It's just a card that literally I drop it in with all my wires and, my cables and my microphone. It's, this big kind of kit bag, and it's got the 3 of Cups in it. From a deck, I think it's one of my old Gilded Tarot decks. That it's the deck that I would have put different cards in Kelly's suitcase when she was going away, so that, kind of a little, hey, I'm here with you. The 3 of Cups wasn't a card I would have tossed in there. So it's in my kit bag, and I will still do that. If this, if I'm feeling particularly low in energy and I want to work out, then, I know that, the Knight of Pentacles or the Knight of Swords, like I'm going to get a Knight-based action card and I'm going to take it out. If I'm thinking about resources, finances, I'm going to the Pentacles. If I want control over what's happening, hey, King of Pentacles, out you come. If I'm feeling particularly fatherly and I want to connect with my children, here comes the King of Cups. Like, that's probably the most consistent use of the tarot. For me, I find it to be particularly powerful, and I'm surprised more people don't use it in that way, because I think of all things that the tarot is, talismanic is probably, to me, it's his biggest benefit. Like, I can literally pull energy out of a deck of cards and hold it in my hands. So why wouldn't I do that? Man, that was like a ramble. Holy cow.
No, it was all great information.
2 spreads in
Yeah. I love that. And I agree with you about using the tarot in that way of like pulling a card. Yeah. Sasha Graham calls that tarot as medicine. What is the medicine that you need? You can literally use it like a crystal or however you want to use it, right? I love to do that as well. And I do that quite often. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, a couple of spreads. So I do what you do for myself in terms of like a free flowing spread. So every morning I pull 3 cards and then I see what the story, like what is the story those cards are saying to me. And then I sort of get an overall message based on what those 3 cards are conveying, or, what I'm getting from that. So I love to do that. For client-based readings, well, I love 3s. I've mentioned this a million times in the show. I usually pull, and I do this for myself as well, but with 3 cards, you can get a lot of information from 3 cards, and then you can go deeper, right? Like we kind of start there, and then we go further if we need to, or it'll spark another like, oh, I want to know more about that. So in the first card that I pull, it's kind of like, what's the current energy, like what's going on right now. The second card is like something that's challenging you or some kind of obstacle, right? Like, and then the third card, because I always love to end on, now what can I do with it? So what can I do to move forward? What guidance am I getting for support? So there's always, it's kind of like a nice, package of like, okay, what's happening, what seems to be, challenging or like an obstacle, and then what's going to help me to move forward. So I love that. I always come back to that. And I use that most with client work. The other thing I love to use tarot for is making decisions. I have a hard time making decisions. Probably another reason why I love the tarot so much. So I'll do 3 cards, but for each situation. So if I want to do something, for example, and I'm like, should I do it? Should I not do it? I'll pull like, what can I expect if I do it, or what can I expect if I don't do it? Because I want to compare them. A lot of times when we're asking the tarot for like what path would be the right one, well, what path are you asking it, whether you should do it or not do it, right? So I always love to pull 2 sets of 3 cards, and then I sort of, again, get that overall messaging or the story or the energy behind one over the other. And the beauty about tarot is that you still can decide. I've had readings where it says like, nah, I don't know, like maybe saying no isn't the great, but I was like, no, but I really feel like I want to do this. So, and that's the beauty. Like tarot gives you different ways to look at things. Ultimately, you still get to decide what it is that you want to do. The other thing that I love, I do this for myself. I don't necessarily do it in client work, but I love a good Celtic cross. I will not lie.
Is that the short version or the long version?
What's the 10 card version?
Yeah,
well, 9. What is it? It's 9 cards.
Yeah, it's 10.
And then sometimes, or is it 10?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to
right.
interrupt your
It's
flow.
10. It's 10. I have to I'm trying to do the math in front of me. Yes. But I always, usually when I'm going to do a Celtic card spread for myself, a jumper falls out before I've even pulled any cards, and I always put that one to the side. I don't include that in my card placement, but I do love that. I get a ton of insight from that. Yeah, and it's just a great, it usually always tells me what I want to, it's pretty bang on. When I'm going to go to that spread, I always have, I'm like, yeah, I am on the right track. So it's a very validating spread for me. So
the affirmation, that's great. I love that. And when you talk about the idea of especially doing client work, and I'm sure that the appreciation is always, because sometimes people will come and they want answers and guidance. And what you sound like you do is, if both for yourself and for others, is you kind of reframe it and say, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to give you guidance, but in the end, the action that you either choose to take or not to take, because you mentioned that as well, which I think is really valuable, is up to you. Tarot's not going to do it for you. I think all the examples that we've got, including the idea of, to quote Sasha Graham, the idea of tarot for medicine, is you empowering the choice that you make, right? You go and select the card that you think is going to embody that, and then you follow through with the actions and the energy that's contained in the card. Same thing. You're looking at cards and it tells you a little bit of background and the foundation, what's going on now. A lot of times that's affirming. And then it's like, okay, here are some possible options. And what do? Well, you either take them or you don't. The same way if you go and get advice from a friend, they're going to tell you, hey, this is what I think you do. And, you're either going to say, look, I think that's great. Or no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and do something else. The tarot's, okay, well, all right.
Yeah, you get to just.
You asked, now you do you.
Yes, and I think what it does is it really shows us things that we probably already know but aren't looking at, right? Yeah. Honestly, I recently did a spread where there was something that I wanted to do and I was really excited, but I knew I was being a little impulsive, and I'm like, okay, should I really spend my time like actually doing this, or do I pause it for now? And I pulled, I did my option A, which is go for it. Option B was like, not right now. And option A was like in my face. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, you called me out on it. And it was good for me to see that, because had I not done that spread, I probably would have acted really impulsively and done the thing, and it would have led me down some like rabbit hole. But actually seeing the cards and it like being so on it, and it wasn't like never, it was just like right now is probably not. So again, I could have taken that and been like, thank you, tarot, but I'm still going to do it anyways, right? Like, there was nothing that was like bad that was going to happen if I did it. But it was a really honest, in my face guidance of like, maybe not right now. And I'm like, okay, I will. And then it was great because I was like, I just shut it down. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because there are more answers than yes or no, right? There are all kinds of different degrees of yes, no, and not yet, not now, yes, but, yes, and all kinds of stuff.
Or if I do this, what is it going to cost me? Like
Exactly.
what
Yes,
is it
and at
going to
what
be
cost?
challenges?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or what is going to fulfill me? Like if I do this, like what can I expect in the next few months? Right. So it's,
Totally.
but yeah, I always say never ask the tarot a question you don't want the answers.
I know. Well, you're going to probably send me now. You mentioned Celtic Cross, and I haven't done that in forever, I don't think. But you're right. You're reminding me what a valuable tool that is. And that is a spread that goes back a ways.
And there's variations. I kind of created the one that I like for me because some of them are,
yes.
I do. I love the insight that I get from it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's where I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna be looking, I'm sure, for insight, especially with all the changes that are coming. It could be a Celtic Cross in my future.
Yes.
All right.
And you're gonna be like, oh my God, that's so good. I'm already excited for you, and you haven't even pulled a card yet.
I know. Well, and I've been thinking about that. Like, where does the tarot kind of go for me from here? And I think listeners know I spent a lot of time in education, and in particular in educational leadership, but was a classroom teacher and then also a vice principal and principal. And through most of my career, I know through my entire career as a principal, I would have had a tarot deck in my desk all the time. As a matter of fact, often it was Corinne Kenner's Wizard Tarot because it had a school-based theme in it. It was often the deck that would sit inside my desk. Now, of course, it was only for guidance. It was not like I'd ever take it out, although I did have some, conversations about the tarot from time to time because it would surprise people. But I suspect that one will go in my student bag as I'm making my way into school for sure. We'll see. All right. Do we have anything
be in the library pulling cards?
I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
If you don't go to the library anymore, though, I don't know. That's where I used to go when I would study in university. I'd have to go to the library.
This is going to be a discovery for me. So anyways, I was going to ask anything that you wanted to add, any topics that we didn't cover, because I know we had said, how do we use it? Why do we love it? And what are some of the aspects that we love? But
yeah, the only thing that I will add is that you can use it for anything that you want. I use the tarot to help me pack my bags when I go on vacation. Like I have such an intimate relationship with the cards that it's just, I don't know, it adds this nuance to my life. Like
So is that like how many pairs of shoes am I bringing? And then it's like a shuffle and it's like, 5 of air, 5 pairs of shoes. Is that kind of how that works?
I probably will create a post on this because I recently went on a trip and I was like, sometimes I use my pendulum actually to be like, I'm an overpacker. The suit, right? Like, are we starting to understand Bonnie here? Bonnie has a hard time making decisions. Excuse me. And packing is really stressful for me because I'm like, oh my God, am I getting and I pack for every single scenario. Like, what if it rains, or what if one day I want to go on a treacherous hike and I absolutely need these hiking shoes? Like, it's ridiculous. So I have to surrender and really allow the guidance I'm getting either from the pendulum or most recently with the cards. And I was kind of pulling cards to see, like, I would pull cards to be like, what are I forget exactly how I worded it. I have it written down, but it was like, is it in my best interest to bring this item of clothing, right? Mm-hmm. And then based on the card that I would pick, I would kind of know, like, okay, this suit is probably a no, this suit is probably a yes, or what is the vibe I'm getting from that card? And the cards were really honest with me, and was a very pared down layout of what I should bring, and I ignored it. I'm like, no, that cannot be true. So I overpacked, and I literally wore what the cards
the
were
card
telling
set.
me that I should bring. So it's not to say that don't bring an item of clothing that you're not going to wear. We do that when we pack. Like,
Of course.
you bring things as just in cases, but I brought a lot of just in case stuff that I did not wear. And I was like, I should have trusted the tarot.
That's always the way, right? It's like, if you don't, I should have trusted.
I mean, it was fine. It's not like I was
of course.
overweight, like in my suitcase,
it's
and
not.
I didn't get charged for anything. But sometimes when you just carry, and do you know what card I put it? So I used it as medicine, and I also used it to help me decide what items I wanted to bring. I put the 10 of Wands out because I was packing in my bedroom. I put it on my bedside table, like beside my bed. And every time I was kind of like, ugh, I would look at that 10 of Wands and I'm like, am I bringing too much? Because, right, it's like you're carrying so much, like put some stuff down. So that 10 of Wands was helping me to be like, ooh, like I don't want that feeling of having like to carry a really heavy load. So that was my card as medicine, which is an interesting take if you're going to be packing, right?
Interesting. A quick question around packing. Do you bring a tarot deck with you?
Oh, yes. And then, of course,
in your carry-on or in your pack suitcase?
Both. Like
my carry-on?
I put them in my husband's suitcase because mine is usually
do they go through security or do they come? Because almost every time, mine's either bag, box, or tin. Almost every time. I get flagged and my carry-on bag goes off to the side because of the tin or box. Bag, not so much. But I do believe in the bag it's also been pulled. And I think it's because of the shape of the deck and they don't know what it is. So for now, I've been saying it goes off to the side, and it's like, this your bag? Yeah, I know exactly what it is. It's a little cube, right? Yeah, what is that? It's a tarot deck. You'll find it down there at the bottom. Of course, it's like, nothing in here is going to hurt me. You're not going to cut me. Nope. So sure enough, they pull it out. And, depending on the look I get, they're like, yeah, you just put it back in. So often, more than 50%, it sets off the security. So
so
the tarot's way of saying, I'm reminding you that I'm here, by the way.
That I'm here. Yeah. So I'm an experience with that too. I
haven't pulled my, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I will bring a few decks. I'm better now. Before it was worse. But my decks are usually wrapped in a cloth. Yeah. So I put those in my suitcase. The smaller one, I always have, I have the mini light Sears tarot. That comes everywhere with me. That like even fits into my tiny little like belt bag. So I usually have that with me. And then I'll usually bring a tin with me or two as an added on my carry-on. But I don't have them with me as I'm walking through security. But I was at, if I'm not we went to a concert as the family and I had a tin in my little bag and the thingies went off. So my family is like taking off and I'm like, oh my God, security flag. They had to go over and it was because of my tin.
Tarot tin?
Right? My tarot tin set off the security alarm thing and they're like, oh, really, Mom? Like you're getting pulled over because you have a tarot deck in your bag? Really? I'm not Mom. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting going places and traveling with the tarot, right? Because especially for long flights, we head to Sydney, I had at times taken my tarot deck out and either done some work, or done some writing, and done a little bit of tarot work on the plane. And I stopped doing it. I probably should have because it's not. You know what though? I watched one woman walking down the aisle heading into the bathroom, and of course I always sit in an aisle. And of course, as she walked by me, heading kind of up the aisle, I could see her hands come up and she did the sign of the cross. And I was like, whoa, I thought, oops, maybe I should tuck this away. But then I was like, you know what, it's your problem, that's not mine. And I thought, I wonder if it's going to be a good conversation to have if, coming on the way back. But when she came back from the bathroom, her eyes were averted. She was basically watching the ceiling as she walked by me. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That is funny.
It is. But all right. Are we going to draw a card? We can't
do our last episode without drawing a card.
All right. And of course, I have the Gaian Tarot here with me. So
okay, I'm going to use the Muse Tarot.
All right, there you go. We talked about some of our favorites, and I don't want to shuffle and just I'm curious. Oh, there we go. I got a jumper. Look at that. Oh,
you did?
I did get a jumper. I was gonna shuffle and then stop. but I got a card that fell out, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to use, this is my reading card. It's a lovely card,
Ah,
because I was kind of thinking, not because, I know we'll get together again. I know our friendship is going to continue. I was kind of thinking of, kind of energy, because it is bittersweet. I think we talked about the idea of it being, bittersweet. I know that, for the people who've been along this journey with us, some from the very beginning, we can thank you enough. That's a massive commitment coming, from you. If you've just discovered us recently, thank you. Please don't go away. Go back and have a listen. There's all kinds of, conversations. We've been getting into this, but I was thinking, like, what, not necessarily what comes to this, but, what kind of card would summarize this. And look what I pulled. I pulled the sun.
oh,
That idea of shining a beacon, shining light, making something clear, maybe perhaps overly so, because I think there are times, where, not that we're over the top, but, we have a clear passion and, kind of heat and warmth, and we want to shine the light on the tarot for other people. So I think the sun card, and I think we do it in a way that is joyful and celebratory. We've even talked about the idea of some of the cards that people would be like, oh my goodness. And it's like, there's no bad cards in the tarot, no real good ones either. There's just a lot of good guidance, and yeah, and I think it's a reminder of a celebration of kind of what we've brought into this tarot space, you and I. I think, and the friendship that has developed. We didn't know each other beforehand, and you're definitely my closest tarot friend, but we have a friendship outside of this space as well, which I value. So that all came from this. So I think the Sun card is a great card to get in that regard. So anyways, so
oh, good. Oh my God. Yeah. I love that, Peter.
yeah.
And I agree. I feel the same about you. You're my tarot bestie. I've said that to you many times.
I'm always amazed as to how many people we first got it just assumed that we were partners. To think about the, kind of the ease of connection. It was like, it was the conference that we were at, and like, well, you're not married? It's like, well, we are, but not to each other.
Yes, we have spouses, but they're not. Yeah,
they're not us. So anything to add? What would you add to about the Sun card?
oh, yeah, everything that you said. It's just, I think we talked about the sun in our last episode too, but what I love about the sun, and
Yeah, we
I
did.
need to
That's right.
speak,
That's right.
I'm going to speak to this like through sort of my experience was the sun can be vulnerable, right? Like a lot of times the sun card, the person in the sun card is naked. Sometimes it's a child like riding a horse. And sometimes it can be hard to come out in that bright light. And I think that this whole podcast was that for me, right? Like I was so afraid of like talking about the tarot. What is my family going to think or my friends? But it was just, it's this thing that brings me so much joy. Our friendship brings me so much joy. Whenever we got together and talked about it, it literally like shifts the energy in your body. And it's like, how do you not want to share this with other people? And the success of that is really about doing the things that you really, really love. And then when you sort of embody that energy, it affects other parts of your life. It radiates out of you. It affects your relationships. So it is really about like doing the things that you love. You're always going to have success when you're in this like positive, happy vibration, right? And sometimes doing the thing that you love can feel really vulnerable, but it's doing it anyway. So if we could encapsulate this entire podcast into one card, it would be the sun.
Oh, good. That's probably why I jumped out of my deck then.
Yeah, I was like, hello.
I love that. I love how you talk about that too, and mentioning the concept of the vulnerability, because I think we have both said we would have never done a podcast if it had been, kind of each of us on our own. Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so you ready for my card?
Yes.
It's funny that this card came
Not
to
the
me
Seven of
because
Swords, is it?
no, but it's another card that I usually have out for me. It's Temperance.
Oh yeah. Actually, I think it was might have been the card that you had out when we first started. Might have been when we first started this podcast. I think Temperance might have been because I think you had monthly cards at one point in time that you were drawing. And if I remember right, Temperance was pretty early on. Anyways, go ahead. Yeah.
Temperance usually sits out on my desk because moderation is a big thing for me. And temperance reminds me that it's moderation is good. I tend to live in that like 0 to 100, right? If it's like, if I can't do it perfectly, I don't want to do
Right.
it. I live in extremes sometimes. So temperance really brings me back to this place of like, sometimes we do go into those places and that's okay. But it reminds me that moderation is key. And, what I love about this card is that it's also and this is where I struggle too. It's about like being in that zone of like knowing you're like the spiritual being having this physical experience. So I just want to be up here all the time. Like I just want to fly around in the cosmos and be in the spiritual world. But it's like, okay, I have to actually live in this physical world, right? So it reminds me of the importance of both of those things because the spiritual part's really easy for me. The living in the physical world is much more difficult. So it's about that as well. The temperance card also reminds me about the support that we have. Like usually there's an angel in the card. Usually the temperance card is such a beautiful card and it's almost like that guardian angel. So again, it's like we're on this path, we're having this human experience that can be really, really difficult if we think that we're alone, right? But if we know that we're always supported sort of by this higher realm, like we forget sometimes to like draw upon that support. So Temperance card has a lot of different sort of meanings for me. And it's like really it's a card that I know is always challenging me and something that I always need to grow into. So whenever I see that, it's a welcome sight. I love the temperance card. And yeah, that was a lot about me in this.
Well, but it's interesting because it is a personal card for you as well, because it's one that you have, out quite a bit. So interesting that, it would come out as well, in a reading that we both took kind of personally a little bit, considering, we're putting a pin in this particular project. So for now.
What would you say about temperance?
All the things that you would have said, and I would add, because the idea of temperance to me is still that concept. We should talk about the idea of moderation and, kind of a bit up here and a bit up there. And I think I go back to kind of thinking about the idea of fire and water, this particular card, or even the idea of alchemy, that being the alchemist. And that concept of the sum is greater than the parts. The idea that, when we put two things together, we create something that is greater than what each of the things are individually. And I think that's a great kind of definition of what we've done here with this podcast, is that, you and I have particular practices, both personal and professional, to do with the tarot, but then we come together and we hold it in this space. And then I think what was created out of that could be deemed to be greater than the sum of the parts. Do you know what I mean? So I think the card is a reminder of that. And then it is also, like I said, it's a card of fire and water. So it is that idea of, both bringing love and empathy and compassion, but also passion and intuition, and initiative, and that thing that lights you up, and bringing all of those things into a single space and holding room for both of them, being able to hold both the fire and the water, inside that space is a good reminder. That the temperance card is a good reminder for that as well. So, that's the only thing that I would bring to that conversation.
Yeah, I love that for sure. Alchemy, 100%, right? Like you're shifting things, you're making things happen. And I think that one without the other isn't possible, right? If we just live up here all the time, bringing it down into the earth isn't possible. But if we're just so earth-based that we never pay attention to this part, then either we're not getting guidance or we're not sort of getting that support to make things happen. So 100%.
Temperance is the spiritual bartender, right?
Yeah, actually, there's a deck. It might be the Trick or Treat Tarot by Barbara Moore. I believe that the woman has gone, she's in a bar and there's a bartender. If I'm wrong, I apologize, Barbara Moore, but I do have a card where The temperance part is the bar.
Is a bartender. Right? It makes sense, right? We're taking, if anybody's had an amazing, a perfect cocktail, it is taking things that often, consumed on their own are not going to even come close. Not even going to come close to the experience that you have when blended together, So.
Yes. 100%.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, 100% would be a lot of alcohol. But.
I think is it a
martini.
call it?
Martini.
Right? Well, yeah, but a martini, you pretty drink it straight up. Well, I guess because if
all alcohol.
It's a dirty martini,
it is, yeah.
It's all alcohol.
If it's a dirty martini, it's got a bit of olive juice. If it's a lemon, lemon drop martini, bit of lemon juice, although I make them with limoncello. So again, it's still, still all alcohol.
Yeah, I was going to say my dirty martinis are, well, I mean, there is quite a substantial amount of olive juice. Maybe but
there you go.
Anyway.
Look at this, right? People listening, you get the tarot, you get bar recipes, cocktail recipes. All right.
Cocktail recipes. Now I want a dirty martini and it's only 11 o'clock in the morning.
It's like 11:15. I'm sitting here having a dirty martini. Why? Because Bonnie told me to.
Yes, for sure.
The part I'm dreading. So what have you got coming up? Where on earth will people be able to find you?
Okay, thank you, Peter. So because I love this podcast so much, and because Peter is going to be taking a bit of a pause, I will be continuing the podcast, but it will be under the name of Tarot with Bonnie. So if you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to still follow what I'm talking about, I would love to have you join me in Tarot with Bonnie. It hasn't officially launched yet, but it's definitely in the works. If you'd like to follow my journey and be the first to know when this episode launches, I'd love to have you on my email list. You can go to bonniekoenig.com or breathewithbonnie.com. We'll put the link in the show notes, join my email list, and then you'll be the first to know when anything happens. So this podcast has been a huge part of my life. Although I won't be sharing it every time with you, Peter, although I hope you're going to come back and be my special guest. It's something that I would love to continue to do. So, I have a lot of stuff in the works, new tarot mentorship that I'm working on. So, best way to follow me is through my email list. And how
does somebody sign up for your email list? Through your website?
Oh, through my website. Yeah, you can go to both of these links work. I might be transitioning from Breathe with Bonnie to bonniekoenig.com. They're both live. So you can either find me at breathewithbonnie.com or bonniekoenig.com. You can sign up for my email list and never miss a thing. So
and we'll put all that, make sure all that's in the show notes too. Both of those links will go in there. So
absolutely. Absolutely. How about you, Peter?
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm kind of putting a pause, I guess a long pause in most of my professional tarot practice. So, clients, mentees, and then the podcast, although I will happily accept your invitation to be an occasional special guest. I certainly won't sell my tarot practice. It's a personal practice of mine. But we'll be studying in person full time in the Masters of Public and International Affairs. So through York University, through Glenn College, actually, it's a bilingual program. So it's both en français and in English. It's been a passion of mine for a while. So that's a 2-year program. It includes an internship in the middle. I don't know what that's going to mean. I'll be a 60-year-old intern. That should be fun. But I don't know. Again, I've always wanted to complete my master's degree. I took all kinds of master's level courses when I was in education, but actually never completed a degree in a program. So this is, one of those things where it's like, I wanted to do it, had the opportunity to do it, actually got support by the program and have a full fellowship for the cost of the program, which is lovely. And we'll be, I think, learning about what's happening in the world right now through both policy and politics at a time that's pretty interesting. So, I'm really looking forward to that. But like I said, we'll not be putting the tarot away from a business perspective, the one thing I will be doing is I will be kind of repackaging my cards of the Zodiac. So look for that to come sometime this summer. For those of you that missed that opportunity, there'd be ways to be able to use it as evergreen material, kind of pulling out the best of and putting it together as a series of videos that will be available on my website, peterwhitetarot.com, which also isn't going anywhere. My courses are always there. They're self-guided. I will certainly be monitoring that space to answer any of your questions. So you're welcome to stay connected with me in my tarot space. In that space, you could follow along with the learning journey because I'll probably write on that. That's my other website, which is Peter J. LeBlanc, LEBLANC.com. Haven't blogged there in a few years because I hold that space as kind of my sort of learning educational space, but I will go back to it. So you're welcome. You're welcome to do that. And I sure as heck hope that you will continue along your tarot journey with Bonnie and learn from all of her insights on Tarot with Bonnie. I know I will definitely be subscribing and following what's happening.
I'll have one subscriber. Thank you, Peter.
You'll have a first subscriber, but I suspect that there are an awful lot of people, that will be there. Once you have it up and running too, we'll make sure that we put that information on our podcast so that people can, kind of get links there, or certainly they should sign up for your newsletter, not just for that, but for all kinds of reasons. So yeah, that's me. And then, the music side of me will not stop, but it definitely will take a bit of a backseat. I've already kind of told the people in the band, less gigs will definitely be on the horizon because until I know more about the program, everything else is kind of going on hold. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. I'm excited for your journey ahead, Peter. Yeah. I'm excited to learn alongside or see what you're doing on this adventure. And I honestly, I wouldn't be able to start my own podcast if I hadn't done this with you first. So I want to thank you for taking a chance in me from the very beginning. I'd always looked up to you. I still do as a mentor and somebody with so much tarot knowledge. And when we would get together for coffee and just talk about tarot, it brings so much joy to my life. And then when we were able to actually create this podcast and get it going, Peter is behind the scenes doing all of the editing and putting it out into the world. So that's going to be a piece that I'm going to have to learn and take on for me. But you've given me the confidence. I mean, I'm still scared, but
no need to be. But
knowing that it's possible that I'll be able to do this. And if we hadn't shared this experience together initially, I'm not sure that it would be something I would have just taken on my own. So I hope you know how much I value our friendship. I value the relationship that we formed through this tool that brings so much joy and insight. And I look forward to the many years we have of our relationship and many more episodes. I don't see this as the last episode. I just see this as a bit of a pause. So
I agree. And thank you for all that. And it's the same, right? I always think you in some ways almost have too much humility. I think you sell yourself short sometimes in the experience and knowledge that you bring to the tarot space. So I'm absolutely thrilled to hear that you're going to continue you're going to move forward in the in the podcast space with the tarot. And then as far as all the editing and stuff goes, so what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to ask your friend Peter, as opposed to your co-host Peter, for help. And he will absolutely be able to do that. So of course.
I'm pretty good on the technical side. Once I figure out how to
all the show notes, it's not like, you've got it. This is a work that is clearly a shared work. The tiles that get put together, any kind of, promo shots we put on our Instagram feeds, you put all that stuff together. So, I'm not taking credit for stuff I didn't do. Anyways. All right. Why don't you sign off and tell people.
You sign us off,
All right,
Peter.
all right.
You sign
Look,
us off.
I thank you so much for joining me on this journey, Bonnie. Like, you're right. Would have never done this without you. So from a small conversation in a little, shop here to a coffee shop conversation, to 78 episodes of a podcast is pretty big. Massive thank you to everybody who, whether you're new to this podcast, whether you've been here since day one, wouldn't happen without you either. So, your engagement, your sharing, and definitely your questions, even just your support has been massive. We couldn't have done it without you either. And please, by all means, continue to share, continue to comment, continue to engage. We're not going away. Like I said, putting a pin in it, as Bonnie mentioned, doesn't mean that we're in any way, parking this forever. Although it's, kind of medium term, I could absolutely guarantee you that there will in all likelihood be an episode 79 at some point of Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. But until then, Tarot with Bonnie should be on your radar. breathewithbonnie.com should be on your radar. And having said all of those things, thank you for joining us on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We will see you all again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.